Buongiorno, buon pomeriggio, and buonasera laziali. We are excited. Your host, Sean McIntosh, joined by Caleb Adams here to talk a breaking signing made official today. We never want to get too hyped up until we see the player, not just in Rome, because we all remember being burned by the likes of David Silva. But until we see that official announcement on Instagram, on Twitter, of the player holding up the scarf with an official announcement from the club, I'm always hesitant. But made official today with a big signing, Kamada to Lazio has been made official. Big signing. It's our second signing of this mercato. Caleb, off the bat, how do you feel? What were the emotions today?
Oh, so hype, so hype, so hype. I couldn't believe it, to be honest. It all happened so quickly. I didn't even know we were being linked or anything like that. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's done. And
Yeah, quick.
especially, I was super quick, especially following sort of like the more negative news surrounding the market right now. And it's kind of been kind of dead and some failures and things are looking kind of grim. So this definitely kind of picks things back up and puts us on track.
Yeah, I mean it's big. Let's just talk about some of the facts right now. Daichi Kamada on a free to Lazio, being reported, nothing official yet, but looks like it'll be a 4-year deal. Keeps him at the club through 2027. He's 26 years old, Japanese player, attacking midfielder from Frankfurt, played in the Bundesliga, first Japanese player in Lazio history. There's been some really good ones to play in Serie A, but
Hmm.
opens up an entire market. So we'll get into who he is as a player, but off the pitch, this opens up a huge market. Obviously, Mizuno being the sponsor, reportedly having a hand in making this deal work. We've seen a little bit of that in Major League Soccer with Messi and Adidas.
Yeah.
But one of those times where a kit partner is a true partner and comes in to help
Mm.
make a deal. So he is the biggest free agent on the market. Comes to Lazio. You mentioned the excitement. I look at that, and again, we'll talk about the player and how he fits. But what a big get. He was linked to Milan for a while, linked to a number of big clubs around the world, and for us to sign him, again, wasn't linked to the club early on in the mercato. There was some swirling rumors the past few days, but relatively quick work done by Lotito to make this happen. On the heels of what was a couple hour discussion with Sadi a few days ago, that got the Twitter chatter up about negativity and maybe the president and the manager not being on the same page. So let's talk about him. Let's talk about him as a player. Caleb, you're coming in handy because we had the opportunity to talk about Tati, having watched him and seen him a lot. But this is a player that you've had your eye on, had watched a ton of, having followed Frankfurt and paying close attention to the Bundesliga. So let's talk about him. What are some of his strengths that Laziali can expect and hope to see?
Yeah. So I tend to watch. I'm not a Bundesliga fan or a Frankfurt fan by any means. However, Frankfurt's been the team that's intrigued me for quite a few years now, and really the only team that I watch over in Germany. And the first thing that comes to mind with Daichi Kamada is that for the biggest strength that he has is his movement. He's not so much a player that uh, takes the ball and dribbles three or four guys and then makes a play. No, he's a really intelligent player who's athletic. He's fast. He's deceptively fast. He's played out wide before, so he can play a winger position if he needs to do it. But he, like as we said before, he is attacking midfielder. But he loves to drop in between the lines. He gets into different pockets and finds his little pockets, and then receives the ball and then is quick to make decisions. So he's a very efficient player. He's not very fancy. Doesn't have crazy skill moves, but he's athletic. He's very intelligent. Again, just roams between the lines. Loves operating in the half space. And another thing that makes him really deadly compared to other players is, and actually reminds me of somebody that just left from Lazio, is he's very two-footed. He's a very two-footed player. Whether it's his left, his right, he can shoot with it. He can pass with it. Like Milinkovic Savic, who had a very strong weak foot as well himself. So he's a player that can play make with both his feet, isn't relying on either one. And also, he's not a defensive liability. His defensive efforts don't really get talked about because he is primarily a playmaker, but he averaged 2 tackles a game last year. 2 tackles a game, even for a midfielder, like even for a defensive midfielder, is like really solid, let alone an attacking midfielder. To get 2 tackles a game and average that throughout the season is really impressive. So he's not a liability on defense either.
So where do you see him potentially struggling? What were maybe some of the weaknesses that folks can be mindful of?
I think that, of course, the adaptation to the league. I'll be really interested to see how the more faster open Bundesliga play, how maybe that can affect him coming to Serie A, which it is a little more compact, a little tighter. That's sort of the biggest question mark for me is, hey, is he going to have that sort of room to operate in, those gaps? Will he find those sort of gaps in Serie A? We don't know that yet. And so I want to say I think he can, and I'm confident that he will. But I think in terms of weaknesses, he's just a complete player. Whereas, like, in terms of his game, technical ability, he doesn't have too many weaknesses. I would say not really a weakness, but he just doesn't really take players on, even though he can as much as he should be. So one thing that was kind of some fans may not like about him, or maybe they won't expect more out of him is, hey, take that player on. Be a little more aggressive, take that player on. He progresses the ball much more with his passing than he does with his dribbling. And so I would say that he only completed like 0.5 dribbles a game last season, which isn't much, but he was doing it another way. It isn't that he wasn't progressing the ball. He was just doing it through his passing instead. Again, like I said, he likes to pick up the ball in different pockets of space and then play quickly. And not so much a guy who can just drive at you and kind of create. Milinkovic Savic could go on these like lengthy runs in the midfield, and because he has so much power to him and he had a good touch. And Kamada is capable of doing that. He can 1v1 defenders. He just isn't as willing to do that.
So, you mentioned him being a pretty versatile player, like probably spent
Super.
most of his time as an attacking mid, but can slot in on the wing, can play as a forward, maybe behind a primary striker. Where do you see him, particularly in Sadi's system, finding a home?
This is a big question mark for me because if you're looking at the midfield, how it's sort of placed right now, you have Luis Alberto, who is primarily seen as a playmaker, which is kind of what you kind of associate with Kamada. So I'm curious to know if Luis Alberto becomes more of a depth guy, if like just a direct sort of like for like substitution for Kamada coming in, even though Kamada is better defensively. He's also more athletic. Again, Kamada is an athletic player. He may not come across that way, but he is an athletic player. He has a high top speed. He's got an engine. Japanese players all got engines on them. We started the World Cup. Those guys can run for days. Their commitment and their effort cannot be questioned. With that said, though, I'm a bit curious to know if Sadi and company view him as sort of a direct replacement to Milinkovic Savic, where he is defensively sound, but he isn't as much of a physical presence as someone like Milinkovic Savic. So he's going to be one of those dual eights. He's going to be one of those two midfielders in front of the six playing. It's just a matter of, hey, is this guy seen as the natural successor to Milinkovic Savic as a box-to-box, or is he seen as, hey, Luis Alberto is kind of getting a little older. Maybe he can't play as many games, as many reps. And Kamada is going to be our kind of lead playmaker who also provides more defensive stability because, hey, we can still get playmaking with Kamada, but he's also better defensively than Alberto.
Yeah, I think that's the question for me is knowing that he's an attacking mid, knowing that he has a lot of overlapping qualities. They're certainly not the same player, but a lot of overlapping qualities that a Luis Alberto has. And going back to some of the gripes that Sadi had with Luis Alberto last year and not necessarily wanting to play him with a Milinkovic Savic. You have a player in Kamada who's maybe a little bit less of a presence, like you said, less maybe defensively sound than a Milinkovic Savic. I wonder if they're going to be paired on the field together. It'll be interesting because Luis Alberto just put pen to paper on a new deal. That doesn't come particularly given some of the frustrations that he's had and how well he played last year. That doesn't come with an expectation he's going to sit on the bench, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's signing a contract, particularly with some of the money thrown at him from Saudi Arabia, with the idea he's in that starting 11. You have to think Kamada is making that same commitment with the understanding he's going to be in the starting 11. Again, he's a
Yeah.
player valued at almost 30 million. We got him on a free, but when you talk to these players, there's a little bit of a pitch.
Yeah.
You're talking about how they fit into the team, the pieces around them. And so I'd find it hard to believe that either one of those players were pitched the idea of
Mm,
being that backup or being heavily
right.
rotated. And we are playing in multiple competitions, so there's certainly use. I'm pretty confident and happy now knowing that at least at all times on the pitch, we're going to have a playmaker of that
Yeah.
level.
Huge. Yeah.
Um, but it'll be really interesting how we proceed with the rest of the market on maybe finding a player that can provide a little bit more on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, I will add this real quick, and to make it like really clear before I move on, is like Kamada is an elite playmaker. Like this is an upgrade to Alberto. Like they're not on the same level. Kamada is clear. He is an elite playmaker. There's a reason why he was so sought after from leagues all over the world, teams all over the world, because he is an absolute elite playmaker. If you compare his stats to other midfielders in the top 5 leagues, he is 85 percentile and above in pretty much every playmaking stat, meaning he is better than 85% of midfielders at creating opportunities for the team to score from. So, yeah, it's a big question mark, and we'll see how the rest of the market goes. But those are just kind of the last little words I want to put on that.
Yeah. So let's look at the mercato so far,
Mm-hmm.
right? Tati Castellanos, Daichi Kamada. What would you rate us? What grade are you giving us? From an A to an F at this point.
I'll give us a B minus. I'll give us a B minus because, and not even because of the players. I actually think the players are excellent additions. My issue is we're doing this a little too late. That's sort of where the grading for me sort of gets hurt. Is that, hey, the season's coming up in a little less than 3 weeks now. I mean, it's like coming right around the corner. August 20th is the first game,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's 16 days. I mean, that's 2 weeks from now. And so I think the caliber of players that we're bringing in and profiles are ones that are very helpful to us that could elevate our team. But the reality is they're coming in kind of late, and we still got to, at least 2 more signings away, in my opinion, to really have a solidified market.
So who are those 2 signings? We've been linked to a number of players right now, whether it's Isaacson, a winger from Michelin. Samuel Ricci now is again continues to be brought up. Tough negotiations with Torino. I mean, those are just 2 of a number of players. Pellegrini's name looks like that potentially is alive again. What positions, what players for you to feel like this was a successful? We can't get our time back, so it's always going to be a late window at this point. But at least for us to feel confident about the depth, about the starting 11, about it being an upgrade from last season, knowing that we have Champions League. What 1 to 2 signings do you want to see us make? Because again, we're late in this thing. It's hard for me to believe we'll make any more than 2. Maybe Lotito can surprise us. I think we need 2 at minimum, knowing that there's still a glaring weakness at least one position. What are those realistic signings for you that you want to see?
For me, again, Pellegrini, this should have been done a month ago. I mean, this should have been done right at the end of the season, in my opinion. Initially, we talked about, hey, winger, midfield, left back are kind of positions we're still needing. Winger, not so much anymore because Kamada can play winger, Castellanos can play winger. So now we could field, theoretically, a Alberto midfield, Kamada at wing, and we'll still be cooking. I mean, that's still a really great, that'll be a great lineup, a great position to be in. And even so, initially, winger, for me, I think we're good. I think what we got, we're okay with. We can run with this, no problem. For me, again, it's mostly a more balanced box to box, true box to box midfielder again, and a left back. Those for me are the two positions. If I could only choose one, that's kind of tough. Um, Choosing between the left back position and the midfield position. I want to say left back position, just get Pellegrini because something that I think we can get done in time. Already has familiarity with the system, should be able to get adapted right for that first game of the season, right? Um, but as for midfield, I'm not too right now. It's get to a point where I'm not too picky about like who we're getting, but we definitely need a true box to box.
Yeah, I'd say right. Obviously, I think the midfield position, knowing that we're going to be playing in three competitions, I just depth. For me, having players that can interchange. I don't. I get worried. For me, I get a little bit worried about the regista position, knowing that if Cataldi's out, I don't really love Vecino there. I don't know that. I mean, Marcos Antonio, was a little hit or miss last year.
Yeah,
So I'd love somebody that can do a little bit more of the grunt work,
yeah,
particularly if there's any plan to have Kamada and Luis Alberto. Look, I know one of the questions that we got from somebody was about Samuel Ricci, asking if we think it would be a good deal to bring him in at 25 million. I'll be honest, I am pretty high on Samuel Ricci, even if it's even if he doesn't necessarily right now. I think he's 21 years old. He's not necessarily the ideal regista. He probably plays a little bit more than Mezzala, a little bit more of an eight. Um, I like him. I rate him pretty high. I think he's a player. We know he's already gotten some national team call ups for Italy. I think he's a player that, from an investment standpoint, you could profit off of him. You can make 2 times your return at least.
yeah,
So if you can bring him in 25 million, we've already offered supposedly 20 plus bonuses. For me, that's one of those. If you're that close, just get it done. Do it at 25
yeah.
million. So, to answer that question, I would do it. Another player that we're linked to is Morten Holman from Lecce,
Mm,
who's probably a little bit more of a six,
mm.
um, with defending capabilities. So that's another interesting one. How do you feel about Samuel Ricci?
I think you said it perfectly when you said that. Hey, if you're offering 20 million, I mean, and theoretically we need 5 million more to get it right. Get it done because this is a player. You talk about depth. Hey, if Cataldi goes down, we can throw him in there. Hey, if we need a little more defensive stability in midfield as one of those eights, hey, throw him in there as one of those dual eights. And so for me, it's a player that can cover a lot of different roles. Is young, has potential, and yeah, if we're that close to if we're really that close, just get it done. And
Yeah,
again, someone he's familiar with the league. He's been playing here already.
right,
Like it
right.
should be
Familiar with the
pretty,
league. Goes with
you know,
our agenda of getting young Italians.
yeah. So
Always going to be a big fan of that. Mike Vittner asks, is our bench strong enough going into the new season, barring anyone else getting moved on? I mean, that's always been the question of this team. Let's start with our starting 11, right? If we're thinking, for me, it's have we improved on last year? If we're putting out a starting 11 right now, I think hypothetically, assuming everybody's healthy right now, it doesn't look a lot different than last year. I think you're still going to have Zaccagni, Cheeto up top,
yeah,
and that right wing position. Felipe Anderson, I mean, the man played every single match last year, so without a doubt, let's pen him in there. And then I
yeah.
think your midfield starts with Cataldi, Luis Alberto. At this point,
Mm-hmm.
it's really, I said it, like I can't imagine Kamada not coming
No
in to
way.
be,
There's
and
no
maybe
way.
it's not match day one, right? He's got a lot of learning to do with the league, but I think ultimately, I think our best starting 11, at least at this point right now, probably includes him.
Yeah.
Then you got your Romagnoli Casale, no brainer. And
Mm-hmm.
then I think just it, I think having Hisai is probably our left back and Marusic right back.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I worry, right? Like is that a better starting 11 than last year? I don't, DiPeche Rob just said it. I agree. Like, no, SMS is a major loss. I can't,
Yeah.
without seeing Kamada in this league, like, there's just no way he's better than SMS, at least not right now. So I
I
look
will
at
say too, he's a different type of player as well. I mean,
yeah,
people realize like he's not coming in to replace Milinkovic Savic. He's very much a player that provides something new to the team. He's an elite playmaker, right?
right.
So yeah, I agree. I agree. No, I don't think our lineup is better.
But then let's think about the depth, because you can oftentimes make up for it with depth, because last year we lost games, we dropped points because quite simply we didn't have depth, and it wasn't that our starting 11 wasn't strong. It was that they're coming off the heels of a match 3 days prior. We didn't have the opportunities to spell them, and so if we're going into the bench, I don't know that it's much different.
I think we've actually gotten weaker in depth, except at the striker position.
Yeah, just DePiche Rob makes a comment. Now Luis Alberto wants to leave. I do want to say and address that. Like, he's not going anywhere. There was some questions about his contract. He skipped a training. Didn't travel with the team to Aston Villa. Obviously, a little bit of back and forth negotiation with Lotito, but according to reports, like, that deal is now signed. His extension with the team is signed, and so I don't see him going anywhere. But I do think I am concerned about the depth for sure, especially right now. I think the hope is that Marcos Antonio is taking a step forward. Basic, I've given up on him as a player.
Mm.
Um, I had a chance to watch probably about 15 minutes or so of the Aston Villa match. I did not think he looked really good, which is not a positive sign. I try not to take too much weight into preseason matches, but this is now going into his third season with us, and he's just not made the leap. So I can't really rely on him as being sound depth. Vecino's another year older. Pedro is another year older. We're relying on young players that haven't shown us anything or haven't shown us enough for depth. So that's Marcos Antonio, that's Cancellieri, guys that are going to have to really make positive leaps in order to be good depth players for us. So that's where if we can bring in a Samuel Ricci, boom, like we can play around with that midfield a little bit. There's some depth. Like you said, Tati can even play on the wing. There's some depth.
Yeah.
We have some ability to move around a little bit. Pellegrini or that left back position is an absolute must. Then that gives us a little bit of depth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you have Hisai coming off the bench. Marusic can play both. Lazzari is still there. So I
Yeah.
think somebody made a note. Isaacson comes on Monday. Yeah, the links and rumors are quite strong with that one. Supposedly it's close to getting done. That's another piece, at least on the winger position, that gives us some depth. So, it's starting to shape out. I think your grade, would you say B minus?
I said a B minus in
Okay.
terms of the window so far.
Yeah,
And again,
I think I would agree with that. Knowing that we're still a little bit light on signings, but there are, again, Isaacson supposedly close.
mm-hmm.
Pellegrini, it looked like that was dead, but post that meeting with Sari and Lotito, it seems to be at least revived. So that one's a pretty easy one.
Yeah.
Yeah, the question is Lazzari still not preferred by Sari? I don't think so. He didn't finish the season as a preferred choice. Look, I'm a fan of Lazzari and what he can bring. It's
Yeah.
tough.
Me
It's
too.
tough in Sadi's system. He needs to be a little bit more defensively sound. He gets caught too much, and he definitely gets beaten oftentimes. But I think he can be an X factor. I think he is a player that when you need to change the tune of a match, and if you find yourself maybe needing one or on your heels a little bit, he's most certainly a player that can go on and provide a threat. And if he can get his passing in the final third right, and there were some matches last year where it started to click. I most certainly think he's a really useful player. I think he can be in the starting 11 enough times to feel confident. But as far as being a preferred player by Sadi, he's somebody that likes consistency. This is why Felipe was so big for him last year. This is why Amadusic gets so much game time. They may not be players, particularly like Amadusic is not going to be a player that's going to do anything that makes YouTube highlights, but he's somebody that Sadi consistently knows is going to be sound. So, last question here that I want to bring up that somebody's asking is, we could also buy another center back as well. Do you believe in Gila? That's a good one. I was thinking about this the other day because
I was going to bring this up.
Situation, it seemed really strong last year, and it was. Casale and Romagnoli, the best Italian pairing in the league. We gave up, I think it was the second fewest amount of goals in the league. Massive jump from years prior. But if you look at the depth, and if one of those guys goes down, you're looking at Patrick immediately being a starting center back. And we know that is just, they can't have, aspirations of doing anything in Champions League or trying to qualify in the top four again. Patrick can't be a starting center back on a team that has any ambition. And I know he's played a little bit better. And maybe I've just been shell shocked for his first couple seasons with us, but he's too prone to making mistakes. So you look at a young player like Gila, can he develop? That my hope is that he can, and he has, because if not, we're definitely light at the center back position. But there's been no talks, no rumors of us being linked to any other center back.
Yeah, man. We definitely have some more to do on the depth side, because, like you said, if we get midfielder, left back, I think we can hang in till January. We can hang in till January, and we'll be in a good spot. It's just a matter of bringing in these, again, a midfielder and a left back. If we can do that before the window closes, we're in good shape. I feel much better. Right now, I do think we are weaker, just overall.
Yeah, it's going to take a couple signings for us to take a step forward. But look, they've been strong signings so far. So I would say in terms of quality, we're there. If we could just add a couple quantity, then I think we can look at us being up there. Right, Milan's had a fantastic mercato. Inter, I think, has had a pretty strong one. I think after that, you have to look at us potentially, if we can close some of these rumored players, as having a really, really strong mercato. So, I'd say, and then the question about Luca Romero, why he was let go, I mean, that all came down to his agent demanding a pretty large sum. I think it was upwards of $5 million in agent fees. Look, one thing we know about Lotito is he doesn't often give in to demands, and particularly those of an agent. And look, I think that's essentially a transfer fee for a player that we own that, I think the world of him as a potential player, certainly super young, needed a lot of growing to do. I think he has some potential to be an interesting player, but when you get agents starting to demand, 5 million plus, just that was an easy one for Lotito. We'll see if we come to regret it. I mean, he's had a couple preseason matches. He scored a pretty nice goal, on their U.S. tour. But all that being said, we'll to be determined if that comes back to bite us. But any last comments, Caleb?
No, like I said, I do think the quality, like you said, the quality of our signings has been really excellent. I really liked it. It's been ambitious. Kamada was a huge get. Again, at this point, though, it's now about quantity. Okay, we got some quality guys. We need to start also thinking about just shoring up the rest of the squad. And so we still got 2 weeks to go, before the start of the season. Have a little more time after that to get signings. There's still time. So hopefully soon as get done.
Yeah, there's still time, and I like the players that we're linked to. We should be really excited about the ones that we brought in. Tati, I know you and I are both high on him. I think he's a player that, because of his versatility, is going to find time.
Yeah,
He should, so he should find time at that 9 position. He should find time spelling Cheeto, allowing for an aging Cheeto to take some matches off. I think hopefully you're going to see Tati get a little bit more Serie A matches
yeah,
than Arvice Immobiles have in the past, because
yeah.
we're going to need Cheeto to be at his best to do anything in Champions League. So, yeah, I feel good about what we have, but
Yeah, let
we've
me
got a
ask
lot
you.
of work to do.
Let me
Yeah.
ask you one more thing before we head out here. For you, what is a bigger priority? How we perform in Serie A this year or in Champions League? Would you rather have a deep run in Champions League, or would you rather have another second place, potential first, top three kind of position?
So I'm going to say for me, it's actually a pretty easy answer. I think finishing in top 4 again is more important. For me, it's we have an opportunity that we blew a few years ago, and that is to prove that we are a club that can be consistent.
Mm,
And look, there's financial gain for both. So the further you qualify in Champions League, the pot continues to grow and grow. There's commercial opportunities with that. Obviously, the world is watching, so there are opportunities there, but we're just not there as a club yet.
yeah.
We've got to handle business in Serie A. And for me, we need to be a club that consistently qualifies for Champions League, to know that we have that money coming in, to be able to recruit players, right? So
Mm,
for me, I'm thinking about long term. Like, we have the players that we have, and if we make a nice run in Champions League but don't qualify for it the year after, it's so what?
pointless. Yeah.
And unless we start becoming a sound, consistent club, then we can start building on that, and then we can start thinking about making noise in Champions League. But to and I want to be realistic too. Like, yeah, if you tell me we're in the Champions League final and we don't know what happens, like, that seems enticing, right? But I want to be absolutely realistic, and I think our ambition and our goal and being realistic is, let's just get out of the group in Champions League, and that's not enough for me to give up Serie A, if that makes sense. What about you?
No, I agree. I think that right now City is in a place where if we say who are the top 4 teams, we don't really know, right? It's just all over the place right now. I would love for Lazio to become one of those cemented teams of, hey, we know at the end of the day Lazio is going to be up there, right? And we're
Yep.
still not there yet. And I do think that's more important. But again, there's also, if you could, the best case scenario is we finish top 4 and we have a respectable showing in Champions League.
Yeah, 100%.
Which
Absolutely. Get out of the group, have a respectable showing. Um, there's always this, because of the way we've kind of approached European play, particularly in Europa. There's this knock on Lazio that we can't get it done. We're kind of the black stain on Italian football when it comes to Europe, right?
Yeah,
Everybody advances. This past season, it was a great showing from a lot of Italian clubs in Europa and Champions League and Conference League, except for Lazio. But look, the last time we were in Champions League, we did a nice job,
yeah,
until obviously facing a Bayern Munich that was far superior than we were. So,
yeah.
but it's about consistency. It's about being a club that we can look at every single year, knowing that we're Champions League bound. Um, we can be proud that we're a club that's in Europe every year. Now it's time to make that next step to be Champions League contenders every single year, and then build on that, knowing that we can offer that up, that we have the money, and that we have the storytelling to tell potential new players that they're going to come here and they know that they're going to have Champions League football. So, um,
Absolutely.
well, look, this was good. Let's hope to do many more of these, because we're going to have more and more players coming in, and obviously we'll be bringing some emergency pods. We'll do some recaps here during the season. So As always, though, thank you for tuning in. Sempre Forza Lazio.